Hey, good evening, everybody. We've certainly got some weather action coming up here over the next week. Hurricane Harvey is out in the western Gulf of Mexico, and we've had quite a bit of rain here in Texas, too, and you see what's basically convective debris. A little bit of deep level shear you can see here. There's differing cloud motions between the lower 10,000-foot altocumulus layer and the higher cirrus. And there goes a contrail. That's pretty interesting. But anyway, lots of relative humidity in the air, and that's what we're looking at for today as we count down the days till Harvey makes its appearance on the Texas coast. So let's switch over to the charts here, and let's see here. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to download some current data here. We'll see if we can get some of the latest information and see what the surface plots look like. Because that's another way of looking at the environment. You can get an idea of the sea surface temperatures, the shear profiles, so on by looking at observational data. So what we have right now over the Gulf, a little bit of bad data. We can easily get rid of that in digital atmosphere. So there we go. We can replot the map, and there we can kind of see the cyclonic circulation right out here in the Gulf of Mexico. So somewhere in here, that's where Harvey is located. And you can see that the dew points are pretty high up ahead of the storm. We've got 70s, even 78 right there. So if I draw the 70-degree isodrosotherm, it would look something like that right there. And then we could do a 72. I don't know, that 78's a little bit suspicious, so I'm just going to do like that. And then 74, 76 would be something like that. So anyway, quite a bit of moisture lined up along the Gulf Coast. I was going to mention, before we go into the webcast, we had a few pictures from the eclipse, a few late pictures from the viewers, and let's take a look at some of those here real quick. And some of the contributors may be in chat here. So let's bring this up here. Give me just a second to get things resized here. Okay, so that's going to be a shot there from Andrew Clope, one of our viewers, and you can see the moon obscuring the sun there. I'm not too sure where that was taken. It kind of slipped my mind there, but yeah, definite totality there. Very beautiful view of the eclipse and the corona. And then coming around the other side. Some very nice shots there, so thank you, Andrew. We also got some footage from Fred Reamer, our viewer in North Dakota. This was taken from his airplane, I believe over western Nebraska. And so this would be under totality there, and you can see he's up there at 3,500 feet, cruising along. And let me see if I can see where this is. 98 degrees west. Yeah, I guess it's going to be over central Nebraska somewhere. I see a state line. No, that's going to be eastern Nebraska, or western Nebraska. So that's where that is. Okay, so thank you, Fred, for that. And then, of course, Ryan Toomeys went to the Biltmore residence in Asheville, North Carolina, and sent a satellite shot showing totality, showing up as a white patch here as it moved southeast. And then the view from Asheville looked like this. There's the totality through the cloud layer. That's kind of a nice composition. Let me zoom that in a little bit. So a little bit of cirrus there. Very nice colors, and there's another look at the Biltmore residence. All right, so very nice. I appreciate that, Ryan Toomeys. Let me zoom that in a little bit, and then we'll head into the hurricane that's heading this way. There's the NHC discussion right there. Rapid intensification from Harvey as it moved across the Yucatan right there and back into the favorable environment here. So we had good combinations of sea surface temperatures, of shear. And let's see what we're looking at here for a movement. The official forecast, taking that onto the Texas coast. That would be right around just north of Port Aransas there for that track. That right there, it's Corpus Christi Bay, and it's going to be somewhere between Port Aransas and Port Lavaca there. So landfall looking to be sometime Saturday. So by the time we do the webcast tomorrow night, we're going to have some definite weather we're going to be looking at. So, I might do that late show for the Patreon donors, and we can track that storm as it makes landfall. And when we're looking at the progression of the storm, here's a few charts we can look at. This is from the University of Wisconsin, and this is showing us upper level winds. And the color coding is by altitude, so the blue that you see here is 100 through 250 millibars. In other words, it's from about 34,000 up to 50,000 feet. And what you see here is the upper level divergence, like that right there. So we can see that the upper levels are pretty much dominated by Harvey as it moves westward. Now, when we're talking about intensification, one of the things that we like to look at is the upper level divergence, because the more ventilation you have of the storm, the better the conditions for development. But the problem is that once your storm is underway like this, it tends to dominate the mesoscale. So it's very hard to tell what's going to happen. This would have been very difficult to forecast back in the 60s, but thanks to the dynamical models, we can kind of see what's going on. There's the upper level divergence field, and you can see that, yeah, it is completely dominated by Harvey there. But the background, I guess it looks like there's a little bit more divergence throughout the area than there is convergence. So maybe a bit of a favorable environment. Very hard to tell there. And then they have a couple good products in here. The layer winds. Let me go back to that. Okay, I'm going to go out to the main menu, and we'll select this regional real-time product. And what we're going to pick is this layer mean wind analysis. Okay, so you can see we've got some different options here. Let me zoom that out just a little bit. Okay. Now, since the storm is getting fairly developed there, we might want to look at, for example, the 850 through 500 millibar flow. So that might be kind of appropriate for a storm like this. And you can see that, well, we've got high pressure aloft through that layer. Kind of looks like it's got it centered. Let me check the time on this. 25th August 17. Yeah, that's going to be current. So that high there, that's centered over Arkansas. So there's a bit of a steering flow that's bringing it westward onto the Texas coast. So that could be responsible there for a little bit of the westward movement there that we saw there in the models over the past day. 700 through 850 flow, also kind of easterly there. And then the deep 300 through 850 millibar flow. That's a little bit more easterly, like a slight east-southeast right there. But anyway, you know, the storm, all the models pretty much agreeing on a northwest movement. And let me go ahead and show you that in Google Earth. There's the statistical and the dynamical model forecast tracks, and this is all the latest data. You can see that pretty much what we're looking at is a target right there on Port Aransas. So it looks like our eye may be crossing there, and that would mean that the stronger winds and stronger storm surge would be on Matagorda Island right there, all the way out to Port Lavaca. So that's what I would be concerned about. And then the other concern is flooding, because we have not gotten into the actual forecast, but there's some ominous patterns here coming up over the next week, and I'll show you that towards the end of the weathercast after we finish the analysis. So let's head into the satellite, and I'll let you look at that, and then I'll catch up on chat. And there's our look at Harvey out there in the Gulf of Mexico, and just give this just a moment. It's a 40-frame loop, and we're looking at infrared imagery here, all the way from Mexico to Texas up here in the upper left, and then the Gulf of Mexico right there. Okay, we got Andrew here, and Lorelia, Alex Front, Sue M, perfect picture day in Indiana. Ryan Toomey's getting ready for Harvey 101. Ron Chalfant joining us from South Carolina. We've got Fun with Tech and Eddie W, Greg Schultz, Burl H, Alex, Kevin, Ryan, Florida sticking out like a sore thumb. Ryan says C-130 Hurricane Hunter aircraft now in the southwest quadrant of Hurricane Harvey. Recon flights every 6 hours flying out of Biloxi. And Ryan saying Harvey will be a powerful Category 2 or Week 3 at landfall. He's looking for rainfall and flooding being devastating, and that I definitely agree with. Alex Front, very concerning situation with a lack of warning. We have Michael Burrell here and Carl Berghoff. Greg Schultz says Scott Weberpal has some beautiful eclipse images. Michael Burrell asking, do I think the fallout from Harvey will travel eastward and bring rain or just peter out once it goes into Texas? Yeah, we'll cover that later. I've got quite a few charts lined up for that. Alex Front thinking the center of circulation will go west while the precip goes north. We have Trollin Hood 969 joining us, and Mike Estwick says Harv lining up some heavy-duty life-threatening rain. Ryan says Eyewalls recycling, look at that intensification. Mike Estwick has friends in Houston that he's recommending they leave. And Carl says Harvey sure grew quick today, if you ask me. Yeah, this is quite a change from yesterday, and there it goes, heading right up towards Port Aransas there. And there's a quick look at the water vapor imagery. And let's see, do I see much in... Yeah, I mean, you can see a lot of the upper level moisture there in Harvey, but not a whole lot of dry air working into the circulation. And that's one of the things that we look at when we're looking at the decline of the storm. Usually we start sucking in some dry air from the north or from the west, and we don't have that here. There's plenty of moisture lined up along the Gulf Coast, and that'll spiral into that circulation there. So it's going to be a slow de-intensification. unless it goes pretty far inland. Okay, let's see, where are we at? Let's look at the analysis here, because it helps to kind of understand the big picture of what's going on. And we can start with the synoptic scale analysis here. This is pressure and thickness. So we can see that the U.S. is dominated by this high pressure area now in Ontario and the Great Lakes. So the large 1020 and 1016 isobars, they're covering a huge chunk of the Midwest up into Hudson Bay region, and that means northerly flow through the eastern U.S., into the southern U.S., and into Texas. All of that area under cold air advection. And then down along the coast, we've got some residual moisture right in this area, and that's what's feeding into the storm. The return flow of warm air advection, that's kind of confined to the high plains in this area right here. And then in Alberta, we've got a new frontal system moving through, trailing off into Oregon just like that. So a little bit of weather there, maybe a little bit of storm potential there in the Edmonton area today. Plenty of monsoon storms in the Four Corners area up to Utah and Colorado. So I'm sure some rain there for Las Cruces and Albuquerque up to Santa Fe. Here's what the 250 millibar pattern looks like, and typically when we get recurvature of a storm, we have the approach of a trough. And we don't really see that. In fact, what we see here is ridging across the Great Plains, and Harvey located down in the right here. So there's very little to move that along. Up to the north, very persistent polar front jet in the Great Lakes area into the northeast U.S. And there's a closer look at that. 70 to 80 knot winds across the northeast U.S. and that J right there, that's indicating the center of a jet core. That's a jet max there. And here's the surface system. There's the Canadian analysis, and you can see the frontal system there going through Alberta and British Columbia. Behind that, some very cool weather. And as the systems progress eastward, they are going to draw down some very cool polar air into the northern and Great Lakes area of the U.S. So it's going to be kind of a fall pattern here for the next couple of weeks. There's one last look at the upper level patterns. This is 200 millibars, and you can see the subtropical high appears to be centered right around Austin to Waco. So Harvey located down here. It seems like the steering flow would maybe carry that towards Brownsville. Maybe if I didn't have dynamical model output, I might be thinking maybe a westward movement, but as you'll see, there's pretty strong consensus for the models to head northwest. So, you know, who knows? What if the system does move westward? We'll have to keep our eyes on that, but anyway, we've got too much agreement with the models at this point. Okay, let's see here. There's one last look at the theta fields, showing the cooler air centered over the Great Lakes area. And there's all that cool air advection coming in from the north. Okay, and let's take a look at a couple soundings. This one is for Corpus Christi. This is what Harvey will be encountering. As we can see, there's plenty of deep moisture. Dew points in the mid to low 70s. In the low levels there at Corpus Christi, and we have a looks like a conditionally unstable lapse rate right there. So with enough moisture, there is the potential there for showers and storms there at Corpus Christi. And we definitely have the trigger for that on the way. And we'll take a look at Lake Charles. That would be another relevant sounding. and a little bit less moisture. You can see a little bit of drier air aloft there. However, looks like with a weak wind flow right there, it's not really moving very much at this point. Okay, let's head into the forecast here and see what we're looking at for the prediction of Harvey. Well, first we'll start out with the mesoscale forecast, the overnight forecast. This is from the High Resolution Rapid Refresh. So for tonight, the forecast will be looking at the showers over central Texas kind of diminishing with the loss of heating. The model going for a little bit of redevelopment late tonight around 4 or 5 in the morning around the Childress and Altus area right there. Maybe a little bit of upslope perhaps, and a little bit of warm air advection in that area. And we can see Harvey approaching down to the south. There it is, pretty well developed there. So let's take a look at the longer term patterns, the longer term models. This is the NAM. So the NAM bringing Harvey onshore right around the time we do the weathercast tomorrow night. So we see landfall right there near Port Lavaca, Corpus Christi. And then it's got the system very slowly moving. And you can see for our webcast on Saturday, look at that, it's still right there. Maybe moving a little bit up I-37 towards San Antonio, about halfway. And you can see that large rain shield just kind of sitting there over the Victoria and Houston area. And the amount of water that these hurricanes and tropical storms carry is phenomenal. And when I used to train in forecasters at DIAS, I used to emphasize that when you're dealing with these tropical systems coming inland, it's hard to, you can't really overestimate the rain that is associated with them. They are carrying vast amounts of moisture there, and for Sunday, look at this, it's still kind of spiraling around down in the Corpus Christi area. Continued convection there along the Gulf Coast. So let's compare models. Here's the Canadian model. Now you can see one problem we have here. This is the domain edge. Their mesoscale model doesn't go any further south than Brownsville. So that can be a source of error. The model does get its data from the global version of the Canadian model, so there is a little bit of compensation for that, but we can go ahead and use it anyway and see what we're looking at. This is tomorrow night, and a very similar pattern to the NAM, bringing that right through the Corpus Christi area. And then for midday Saturday, it progresses the system up to San Antonio. So a little bit faster movement inland, and that would tend to disrupt the system a little bit more. Now, before I go too far, there is also a system in Florida. And we can see that very quickly. There it is crossing Florida right there on Friday and Saturday. A little bit of rain for Florida, and then the system emerges in the Atlantic. And I think we had the GFS bringing that up the coast and kind of grazing New York. At least I think that was the GFS, but it looks like all the models have kind of backed off on that scenario, recurving the system out towards the middle of the Atlantic there. Okay, so what do we have for the GFS? This is the global model. Okay, we start at the beginning. Then for tomorrow night, looks like landfall in the Corpus Christi area again. And then for when we do the webcast on Saturday, the system is still in the Corpus Christi area, kind of centered right there near probably Beeville. And you can definitely see the rain potential. This is Sunday, continued stationary in the Corpus Christi area. So now 2 days of a dissipating hurricane in that region. And then for Monday, it's still in the area. And now we see the system just kind of sitting there on the coast. Here's Wednesday. There's, this is Wednesday. Here's Thursday. Still got the system right there around the Victoria area. And then by next Friday, now it's starting to track through East Texas and beginning the march northeastward. And there you can see it moving up the Mississippi. And it's finally moving due to a approaching trough. See this big system up to the north? This is very cold polar air moving southward. There's the leading edge right there. And the cold front located right there, the remains of the hurricane right around Memphis. This is going to be next Sunday. And finally, the system gets quickly swept up and moved out, and then we get cool, dry air moving in on the 4th and 5th into Texas. Okay, so that's one scenario right there. Now, let's look at the European model. European solution from this morning. Tomorrow morning, approaching the coast. We don't have a 0Z map, but Saturday morning we've got that moving on shore near Port Aransas. Then we see it stationary there, 982 millibars around Port Aransas. This is Sunday morning, and then Monday morning, still in the area, 972. Look at that deepening. And then for Tuesday, more deepening, 953 millibars. That's probably getting, I can't remember the numbers, but I would imagine that would be near a Cat 3, perhaps, maybe Cat 4. Cat 3, maybe I would probably go with that there. I'm sure Ryan and some of you guys might know. And then for Wednesday, now we got it moving inland, finally dissipating. So it appears the hurricane has probably picked up some good sea surface temperatures, some good upper level divergence, a lot of good factors helping to generate that storm along the Texas coast there. And then finally we get the movement northeast. You can see also a big difference here. We don't have the big push of cold air coming southward yet. This looks like a faster departure of the system. And then finally we get the cold air sweeping southward, and by this time the system is already out in the eastern U.S. So that's the European forecast of this, the remains of this hurricane and kind of a lack of a good push of cold air southward. So some pretty prominent differences in the models there. One way we can kind of work that out is by looking at ensembles. Now, I can't really go through all of these, but you can see that there's different solutions here. These are different perturbations of the GFS model. And we can see that as we get into, let's see here, let's go into midweek. And midweek you can see a couple different scenarios. One, we've got the hurricane stationary along the Texas coast on this panel here. We've got another panel with it stationary around the Beaumont area. And then I'm looking at these other panels. A lot of the other ones have dissipation in the Brownsville area, like all of these. Yeah, pretty much everything in this row has dissipation in South Texas. Then we can kind of look at the others and kind of get an idea of what they're showing. Yeah, just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. A lot of these, I think this one, that one, and this one, they have a very slow northeast drift into Louisiana. So it could be flooding problems there in Louisiana also late next week. And then on the other row, there's some other solutions. A bunch of them bring the system into South Texas. And then right around Friday, they finally recurve them up to the northeast. You can see this one very quickly moving the system into Illinois. The others going a little bit slower here. This one here in East Texas. The other one right there in the Arkansas area. So a bunch of different possible outcomes. Things very hazy for the end of next week. But as far as flooding problems, let's take a look at the final GFS forecast. In fact, first, before we do that, let me show you the precipitable water. Let me zoom this out here. And you can see this is kind of a big blob of 3-inch rain moving inland. This is precipitable water. This is kind of like the total amount of rain we would get out of the atmosphere if it could all precipitate at once. And there goes Harvey inland. And you can see widespread 2.5-inch precipitable waters from San Antonio to Houston. And then for Monday and Tuesday, still hanging on to 2-inch totals in central and east Texas. We don't see very much dry air advection into the storm, maybe a little bit right here in South Texas. But a lot of that moisture we've got sitting across the southeast U.S., that's getting wrapped up into the circulation there. And then finally, we get a slug of very dry air moving in late next week. There it is coming in. And that will help dissipate the system right there. And there it goes. And we can also look at that in terms of anomaly. I had a precipitable water anomaly chart here. I'm trying to figure out where that was. Yeah, there it is. So green is higher than normal precipitable water. So there's another look at Harvey coming inland. Very high precipitable waters over the Houston, Victoria area. And then we can finally see the dry intrusion, drier than normal air coming into the Big Bend and wrapping into the circulation around midweek. And then we see the departure of Harvey, but not before dumping a whole lot of rain over East Texas and Arkansas and parts of Louisiana. And there goes the rapid departure of Harvey about a week from now. Okay, in terms of rain, now this is what's really interesting. Let me show you this. This is the total forecast precip. Let me see if I can zoom this in to where, yeah, that's real good right there. Okay, this is the GFS model. So take a look at this run as we go through the next week. These are total accumulated precipitation numbers, and you can see by Monday we've got lots of 14 to 18 inch amounts from San Antonio to the Gulf Coast. Houston 12 inches, 13 for Beaumont. So this is going to be a widespread damaging flooding event for sure. I think this one is going to go in the record books. And you can see by Wednesday and Thursday, look at that. Now we're accumulating lots of 20-inch amounts. We've got 23 right there from Seguin to Flatonia, 24 in Beaumont, 22. This is just phenomenal here. And even 10-inch amounts coming up into the Palestine, Lufkin, and Waco area. For Dallas-Fort Worth, only looking at about 2 inches right there. But this is kind of a very tight border, and that's definitely subject to change. A lot could happen between now and the end of next week. But wow, I mean, just look at those amounts. I've never seen anything like that before. Look at that, 25 in Beaumont, 24 right there in, I guess that's Columbus or Flatonia. And by the time it's all said and done, lots of 20 to 25s across South Texas. So this is going to be some serious. Look at that, 28 at Victoria. Okay, yeah, let's look at the NAM. This only goes out to 84 hours, but you can see right away by Monday, 23 inches at Victoria. So this is before whatever happens next week and midweek. You know, I'm kind of wondering if we could see some 30s by the end of next week. Okay, so that's all I got for the precipitable waters, and we can kind of compare that to the Weather Prediction Center. They've got some products for this. Their 7-day total precipitation. This was issued about 4 hours ago, and you can see they're going for a max of 25 inches just south of Victoria. And we've got a huge band of 20-inch amounts all the way to Galveston, South Houston. So this is going to have a major impact on the I-10 corridor, Victoria, and the Gulf Coast there. So if you're in that area, definitely take whatever preparations are necessary and consider relocating, because things are going to be very bad, and I'm sure the emergency services and the utilities are going to be under a lot of workload there. So if you have someplace to go, that's probably a good idea there. Okay, let me take a look at chat here. I probably can't read all this. It's a lot of discussion here. I'll have to copy this and look at it later. Mike Estwick says we still got to hook up about hand analysis. Incredible model reading. Sue M says we'll get it in Indiana, and yeah, I think the models have kind of agreed that there is going to be some recurvature, a very brief passage over Indiana, maybe late next week, but I don't think you'll be getting any of those 20-inch totals up there. Pressure readings have dropped from Hurricane Hunter aircraft readings. Ryan says 968 millibars and falling, so rapid intensification, so we'll have to kind of keep an eye on this tonight. Ryan is expecting a large eye wall on satellite and radar by tomorrow morning in about 12 hours from now. So, yeah, when you guys get up, take a look at the satellite, at the NHC products, and see what's going on. If we have anything like a Cat 4, Cat 5 storm, I'll probably do a special show tomorrow. If it stays at Cat 3, we'll just do the usual evening weathercast, and then we'll see about maybe like a landfall type thing for the Patreon donors. And yeah, if you haven't done the Patreon donation, please do that. I'm trying to get the internet fixed up to where we can have 10 megabit up and down. And we're gradually getting there, but every little bit helps, and I appreciate everybody that's contributed to these streams. So anyway, that's probably about all I got. We got quite an event coming up, and please join us tomorrow night, and we'll be talking about... Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, join us tomorrow night, and we'll be talking about that. I appreciate you joining the webcast, and we will see you tomorrow. Have a good evening, everybody.